Hello, everybody. So welcome to our fourth week of practical conversations on COVID challenges with the Mastermind Talks. And I'm very happy to have you all here. Today, our facilitator is going to be Dusty Staub, and Luke Goulet will be doing our timekeeping. And yeah, with that, I'm just glad to have you all here. Christine, nice to see you. And I will hand it over to Dusty.
Well, welcome. The topic is really how to shift perspective and to get willing engagement from other people as part of the change process. Before we really launch into it, I'd like to just have everybody briefly introduce themselves again. Teresa, would you mind?
Sure. I'm Dr. Teresa Nicasio. I'm a psychologist up in Vancouver, Canada, and I do some other things. I'm an author. I wrote a book called Yum, Plant-Based Recipes for a Gluten-Free Diet. I'm a speaker, and I have a radio show where we do all kinds of cool things. And I want to say welcome to Nedja.
Great. Gary, would you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, Gary, you're...
My name's Gary Stone. I reside and live in Melbourne, Australia. So it's 9 o'clock in the morning here. And my background is computers and maths. And I took an interest in the financial markets some 30 years ago. And that's been my core business now for 25 years. So helping people do far better and differently, in a different way, different approach to the stock market, and really get performance that's better than what they would from a 401k or a mutual fund.
Great, thank you. Luke?
Bonjour, my name is Luke Goulet. I'm from Quebec, Canada, a French-speaking dude. And I'm an author, I'm a businessman, I own some real estate, and I'm a lover of life, really.
Great. Leeza?
Yes, I'm Leeza Steindorf, and I'm currently in Portland, Oregon. I am a coach, a consultant, and a speaker. I specialize in personal transformation and also work in organizational transformation. And I guess what I really love is helping people clarify conflict, communicate better, find resiliency in crisis, and generally being happy doing all that. Dusty?
Yes, Dusty Staub. I am an author, a speaker, and I've been running a business for about 30 years called Staub Leadership International. Recently created another company called EQIQ, and our whole focus is liberating the purpose, passion, and power of individuals, teams, and organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get started, and the topic again, the question is, how do you shift perspective and invite willing engagement? And Teresa, I think you're up first.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to repeat myself, something that I spoke about because not everybody here was here last time or another time when I mentioned this. But basically, it's the concept of getting to yes is how I think of the question, getting to yes within ourselves. And I think that one of the biggest challenges we have is that we oftentimes focus on what we think we need to do or what we think we're supposed to do. And so when we don't do it, we wonder, why are we not doing it? And the big question is, I just really want to challenge you, and I think this is the key, is forget about what you need to do, or what you think you need to do, or what you think you're supposed to do, or what other people tell you you're supposed to do, and shift instead to that question, which is really in your own heart, and which is right up your alley, Dusty, the focusing on the heart. But really the question is, what is it that I want? And then you may say, well, I don't know what I want. As a therapist, I frequently have clients who say, I don't really know what I want. I've been doing for just what other people have said all this time. And so I was thinking about today that I thought there's two questions you can ask yourself. Because the two most important things that we do on this planet are to serve others or something larger than ourselves. And also to connect with others. So we can ask the question, those two questions, if there's something we're thinking about as a test, or even the questions like, how do I want to serve others? What are the gifts that I want to offer? I know last time, Gary, you were speaking a lot about gifts, and I think it's a really important thing to get more clarity about what are the gifts that I have to offer and how do I want to offer those? And then the other question is how does this is this an opportunity to be connected with others? Is this an opportunity to to feel that sense of community, because those are the two things that I found that make people happy. You know, Freud talked about love and work. I talk about connection and community, connection and service. And actually connection or, you know, and community are a form of service if you really think about that. So it all can come down to love, really. But to ask those questions. And so once we go from the place, we replace anything we think we are wanting to do or we think we need to do and ask, do we want to do it? And if it's a want, then yay. If it's no, I don't really want to do it, then it's time to go back to square one. And speaking of squares, I see that it's time for my little moment to end.
All right, so now there's up to 5 minutes of response and thoughts from the rest of the mastermind group.
I have a comment on that, Teresa, and also a question on how you would deal with this. So a lot of the clients that I have when we speak about wants is they will explain something that they say they really don't want to do, but they have to do it. Mm-hmm. And I consistently come back to that. If you didn't want to do it, you wouldn't be doing it. No. If I really don't want to do it, but they're doing it anyway. So I'm curious how you address that in the context of this conversation or just in general.
Mm-hmm. And it does. That's such a common thing. I'm saying I'm doing this, I'm doing that, because that mentality of I have to do it immediately sets us up to be a victim. So the moment we believe we have to do something, the moment we believe we need to do it, it comes from like the outside, even if it's our own thought. We press down on ourselves. I have to do this. And we literally disempower ourselves. So I like to bring that awareness. And I'm like, the definition, if you look up in the dictionary, depression means to be pressed down. Big surprise that people who are coming in oftentimes saying, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have no choice, are often depressed. So then I'm like, okay, so you're depressed. And, this is an opportunity. This thought form of I have to, I need to, is pressing you down. Is this something that you want to continue to do or not? And so somehow or another, we get back to the want. No, I don't want to do that. Well, what would you want to do instead? And so if they say, well, I want to do less of that. Well, let's look at how you might be able to do less of that. Well, what do you want to do more of? The key is what is it you want to move towards, as opposed to what you want to move away from. But the key word in both of those questions is the word want. And so getting back to want.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what I'm hearing a lot is something that I speak to is basically ownership. Like either if you're doing it, own it, or if you don't want to be doing it, do something else and then own that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I love, Teresa, the way you talked about Gary's, last week when he spoke about the gift and discovering what your gift is. And I think until people really discover their gift, basically their superpower, they're going to be struggling and they're going to be in pain and they're going to feel that things are imposed on them until it begins to flow. So I really like that link you made with Gary about that.
And just building on that, Teresa, is that so often people say, I don't know what it is that I want to do. What is my purpose? Why am I here? And then they get kind of into inaction. They become caught in headlights and do nothing. And I think the only thing you can do there is continue to be active and continue to ask people. I think last week we spoke about ask people how they perceive you and what are your strongest talents, what are your strongest gifts. But keep trying, keep stumbling forward and you will get there. But the worst thing you can do is do nothing. That's what most people do. They get caught in the headlights of inaction. Yeah,
and the headlights, I think, is a key thing, because when we're in trauma, and even right now with this COVID, everything is different. People feel oftentimes just overwhelmed. That when we do that in our brain, if we ever think about our brain, the cortex actually gets less blood flow when we're in stress and trauma. Whereas the hindbrain, which is that primitive brain, and the midbrain, the emotional brain, gets the lion's share. This is our body's brilliant in doing that. Problem is, when we don't have the clarity of who we are, what we have to offer, those gifts are, and let your suggestion of asking others, consulting with others, saying, hey James, hey Nedja, hey Christine, what are my gifts? What do you see? Because my brain is sort of offline, and sometimes we don't even realize our brain is offline, but it's good to check in with others for that wisdom.
Definitely.
I think also the beauty of our brain is it has different levels, different frequencies, you know, and that's going to be my topic a bit, how to align all of those, the mind, the soul, the heart and soul, and the subconscious mind. And when the mind tells you something and you want it to change perspective, well, you got to go within, meditate, do some self-hypnosis, stuff like that would help to shift perspective, and listen to your gut feeling as well.
Yeah, and thinking about like nature or being in the garden or being in the kitchen cooking are ways that sometimes we go to that quiet place that helps us to reset, that control alt delete and get more clarity about something bigger than ourselves. Because when we just think about ourselves, that's we get lost.
Just Teresa, brilliant comments. Really love it. We now need to move to Gary. So Gary, if you would answer the question.
Yes, certainly, Dusty. I think I'll come at this from a results perspective, because quite often people just plod on continuing to do the same thing and not getting the outcomes or the results that they want. And I think this is where the measurement has to come into it. We have to be accountable to measuring how we're doing and compare that to how we wanted to do, which then goes back to having a plan. And a plan is the first thing that people can do to get out of a state of confusion, getting caught in the headlights, inaction, all that sort of thing. So in a time like we're going through now, there's going to be very few people are going to have the results that they planned that they were going to have. Things are going to be different to what they thought they were going to be. And that typically goes chaos. What am I going to do about this? Inaction, sit and do nothing, caught in the headlights. But now's the opportunity, because so seldom do we step into a new process to get a different result if we're just going along a normal life. And so many of us need a catalyst from the outside to jolt us into action, and to eventually get the results are so far out of kilter with what you planned or expected that it's a shock. So you get shocked into action. And I think there'll be a lot of people around now that that the first phase is kind of denial. Is this happening? And then it gets to a point, wow, this is real. There's such a big gap between what I expected and what the results that I wanted and where I actually am. So what do I do about it? And that's when the action, the activity comes, reset the new plan. And it's really, it's a process of transformation. Everybody goes through processes in some degree of transformation, but it's stepping into a new process. And then you start planning, you start thinking, you have the deep dives, and either it might be by yourself or it might be some other members of a team or family or community. And then you're on a new path, and then you start perceiving new things. You start getting, the motivation. You're either snowballing up or you're snowballing down. We don't just stay at the same place. We're either going up, or we're getting better, or we're getting worse. And that's where we need to start. We need to start thinking about that. So people who are caught in the headlights in action now need to go, right, I need to shift. I need to pivot. I need to come up with a new plan. And what is that plan? Let me step into a new process and look for outside inspiration, ideas. And that's why I think time like this can be a huge catalyst to say, wake up, let's do something different. Otherwise, we're going to get the same old stuff.
All right. So the members of the mastermind group can now respond for up to 5 minutes with thoughts and questions. And I just want to ask you one question, Gary. If there was one key to successful action, to being able to take a very positive action step, what would that key be for you?
The first step is awareness and acknowledgement. Acknowledgement. You're not going to do anything until you acknowledge that it's different. And what we say, the step of denial and doing nothing is that she'll be right, she'll be up, it'll change, it'll come back, it'll be like it was. No, most of the time it's not. And if there's any one dead cert on our time on this planet, is that things change. Nothing stands still, and we have to keep innovating, fine-tuning, tweaking. The only way we know that we need to do that is by measuring what we expected or what we plan to do compared to results. So we have to be real about the results we're getting, and really say, right, not result, I've got to do something about this. Acknowledgement.
And I like that also, Gary, when I talk to people, if especially like in strategic planning, where we're going to be going. If you, let's say you want to go to Rome, right? Any one of us decides we're going to go to Rome. The absolute very first thing you need to do after you decide you want to go to Rome is what? Where you're at. If you don't know where you're at, it's going to totally make no sense. You know, how Dusty gets there and how Gosha gets there and how James gets there. We're all coming from different places. So first you have to just say, oh, here we are. Now what do we do? Then you move forward. That's that awareness. I really like that.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to do a little tweak, a little language tweak, that we also get, myself included, get sucked into this thing. Well, in order to do this, we need to do blah, blah, blah. To just do this little tweak of that, we have an opportunity to do blah, blah, blah. Or if it is something that we really want to move forward, is that going through acceptance first, is what you're saying. Let's assess what are the results. And then once we get to that acceptance of what is it we want to move towards, and how can we get there? That word need to or have to, it's really an interesting one that we use a lot in our language. I catch myself all the time doing that. And so it's an interesting, just a little tweak to that model.
Beautiful. We have about a minute left for sharing around response to Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think we can. And I think, Teresa, I'd love to live in a world of just only doing the things that I want to do. But, I talk a lot about the power of the deadline with my team. And deadlines focus people to get things done by a certain time. And what it does is it prioritizes things. So that's where the word need to comes in. I need to do this ahead of doing that because I've got this deadline to meet. Of course, the deadline has to be aligned to the plan and everything else. And it has to be something that's important to get done, and it has to be urgent and important, not something that's periphery and not so important to what you're trying to achieve. But that's where I think the need comes into. And I think need can be quite motivating to actually do it rather than get into action rather than inaction, and focus on doing the things that have got to be done to meet the deadline. Yeah.
We can develop this more towards the end. Right now, it's Luke's turn to go. And Luke, you're going to be your own timekeeper?
Yes, I am. But just before, I'd like to share with people that I'm the timekeeper. And sometimes I put this ball out is to say that there's a sequence, like a 30-second warning. And we're done. We got to move on. So that's why you see those objects for those who came late. But I'm going to start my timer. I think this is an excellent topic because we all have, at some point in our life, have to shift our perspective. 2 weeks ago, I was speaking about my 3R approach: recognize, reset, and reinvent. I'm going to put a twist in it that's in my book as well, Leverage Your Mind. It's the pathway for the perfect alignment between the mind, the heart, and the soul, and the subconscious mind as well. So I call it the big five. My first of the five is to know it. It's a bit like recognize, but you got to know. And by knowing it, it's always learning. Find knowledge. Get some professionals. Learn from experts. And after knowing it, you get to believe it because you learned about it. So you believe it. It's more in the subconscious mind. And you can meditate a little bit. It's very easy. People think it's complicated, but really the next phase of our normal beta state in the frequency is the alpha. And it's just a relaxed state of mind. That's where you can meditate. That's where you can do your self-hypnosis, basically, giving yourself suggestions. So if your mind says, I don't like it, well, if you have to do it and you have a timeline, then you can shift into your own subconscious mind. So you know it, you believe it, then you do it. And by doing it, you get to live it and feel comfortable with it with time. You stumble forward as well. Sometimes it's not really easy to begin with. I have some example of my own that I had to do chores. I never had a chainsaw in my hands before. I went to see an expert who knows how it works. I did it, I believe it, and then the next is feeling. While you're doing it, you got to feel the moment. And then at the end, when you do all these, you become it, you be it. So basically, that's the message I have. This is my warning. So I have 30 seconds left. So basically, it's as easy as learning to reprogram yourself. We all need at some point in our lives to reprogram ourselves. So play with your subconscious mind, meditate, take the time to go inwards and let the inward help you shine into your conscious mind. When you have to do stuff that you don't really want to do, but you have to do, well, you turn that into opportunity, and you believe it by conditioning yourself into that. And my time's up. Time
Okay.
for a 5-minute question.
So up to 5 minutes for a group to respond.
Agreed.
Yeah, I just wanted to say my favorite thing what you just said, Luke, was play with it. You know, the going to that I think that play and passion and actually pleasure and beauty are often we don't leverage those enough. That those are resources for discovery of what it is, who we are, and what it is we really want. And again, if we want something, if that carrot is desirable enough, we will then have that motivation to move towards it, and then do the tasks as you're talking about, Gary, those tasks that maybe are really unpleasant. I mean, I have yet to find a job or anything that doesn't involve elements that are really not very fun. But if we know what carrot is going to be, a carrot cake, and it's going to be so delish that, okay, I'll go through the grunt work, you know, I'll shred the carrots. Ooh, I didn't mean to grate my knuckle too. Oh well, bonus protein. But it's like, but I want to make that carrot cake, so I will do it. And moving through the discomfort is easier when we have the wind beneath our wings of the clarity of what it is we want. And play is one of the greatest ways to discover what it is we want.
Mm-hmm. You know, when we get to do stuff that we don't really want to do, but we have to do, there's always a reward for it. You focus on the reward, a bit like you said, the carrot, you know, you do something is to achieve something else, to move into the next step. So that's the motivation that you can give yourself and find pleasure into doing it, because you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel as you do stuff. So that's another way also to focus on the reward.
And something that Teresa, you were just saying, Luke, you were saying, going back to Dave's question, which is how do you help somebody shift their way of thinking so that they see things in a new way, which I think we could still address as we go forward. For me, it's my sister-in-law was describing something. She said she got really clear. She tended to focus on the process of how she got places. It's like I had to do 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. Instead, she realized I need to focus on what I want. What do I want? Not what I want, what I don't want, what I want. What's the goal? And then focus on that, and then let the process unfold. Be really clear on what I want. So I think, Dave, what I help people do is help people think about what they want, what their goal is, and get them to really describe it and really ask them if they really want it. And if they say they want it, say, well, if you keep doing what you're doing, do you think you're going to get there? And the answer is almost always no. So then it's a question of going to, Gary, your point, what's the action steps you're going to take to actually move towards it, and never give up on that vision. But if they get focused on the process, they get lost, I think.
Yeah. I think it's you got to begin with the end in mind, and then. But you know, most people, if you just say, "I'm just going to focus on that, and I'll just work it out as I go." Sure, there's going to have to be that. There's going to have to be adjustment as you go. But for most people, I think they actually have to put the steps in place. They have to try and describe the path to get there. What is that pathway? It's not going to be the right pathway when they have version 1.0 of it. But that'll adapt and go. But the way that you adapt and go is keeping your eye on the prize, and that what you've defined is where you want to get to.
Yeah, and I love the saying, stumbling forward. So you try something and you won't get it right the first time, that's okay. But just by trying it, you stumble, but you're stumbling forward. So you do advance even though you're not perfect at what you're trying to do because you don't like it, you don't know how it goes. So stumbling forward is something that I really like to focus on when I talk to people who are afraid of the steps that they need to take to achieve their goals.
I know people talk about the fact that we are human beings, that we've got to spend some more time being, but we're also human doings, and we've got to do stuff. And I think the trick is getting the balance between the two.
So
And this reminds me of a really wonderful exercise that's a fun creative process that you guys may have done, Christine and Dusty, and some of the things is drawing a picture of where you see yourself now and drawing a picture of where you want to go. But the most important picture then is then creating a picture of the transformation, how to bridge from point A to this place you're wanting to be. And it's a very messy place, and that's a place of creativity and possibility. And then when we have that clarity about where it is we want to go, then the resistance to going through that messiness is much reduced.
Yeah.
I know time's up, but that's a great point. Sorry, Dusty, that you just raised, Teresa, is that often I ask my kids and I ask people in my team, where do you see yourself 3 years from now? Human beings have huge difficulty answering that question. They really do, but at least it sows the seed to hopefully get some thinking done about it. But a lot of people have a lot of difficulty answering that question.
And I think that perfectionism is the enemy of excellence. Going back to the point you were making, Luke. So let's go to Leeza. Leeza, would you please answer the question?
Ciao. From my perspective, and so I'm going to probably be the one that could be seen as sharing some heresy here, because I'm of the absolute conviction that we are always doing precisely what we want to do. Whatever we think, we say, or we do, we're doing it because we want to. We may not want our circumstances. We may not want what is happening around us or what other people are doing. But our response to that, if we didn't want it, we wouldn't be doing it. And so the question for me is, with that awareness, if we take that as a premise, which is what I do, where do I go from there? How do I make a shift? So if I'm thinking or doing things or saying things that aren't serving me or aren't serving the greater good, or for whatever reason I want to change, how do I make that actual shift? And for me, it's a little bit of what everybody's been saying here, is that if I'm moving away from something, I'm actually focusing on that which I'm moving away from. So if I want something different, I need to take my physical being and point it in that direction toward that which I want to move toward. And when I'm oriented in that direction, I'm going to be moving in that direction, unless I'm practicing walking backwards. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing, is to be aware of what's going on, and then to point myself in the direction that I want to move in. Now, the difficulty that comes in situations is, how do we make a choice? So we can talk about the things that we want more, or what we want and what's going to serve us, but most things are gray. It's not an easy selection all the time, because we may want different things, right? Chocolate cake, gummy bears, carrots, right? We have all these things. So, maybe the carrots are 20% and the gummy bears are 40%, or maybe the chocolate. So which one is more? And most of our life balances between that 49-51%. If you remember the old scales, not the digital, where you'd put things on the scale and it would have that equalizing movement, is to find out which one is going to tilt that to the 51% for yourself. So whether you're doing it for yourself or you're doing it as a leader in an organization, to first have that transparency of where is it that we want to move toward, and what's going to get us there. What are the desires or the things that we have available to us, which will move us in that direction, that are going to have that 51% as opposed to the 49%. So mechanically, that's the way that I would say that shift is best made.
Great. So now we have up to 5 minutes for people to respond to Lisa's statements.
I think that's a great analogy, Leeza, about just physically pointing where you want to go, and of course getting your mind pointing that direction as well. And you all know I'm a golfer, so I'll use a golfing analogy. And the one of the most difficult things that golfers have is when they're swinging a golf club, is to stop thinking about the backswing, and it's very, very difficult to do, to actually focus on the target. And it's amazing when you can stop thinking about the backswing and what you may be doing wrong, because that's the reason people think about the backswing, and you focus on the target, that somehow your mind and body conspire together to get the ball to go to the target. Yeah. And it's an amazing thing. It's a tiny, tiny, subtle thing, but it has a huge effect on the outcome. And then when I talk to people about that, I say, well, if I give you a piece of paper to throw in a waste paper basket that's 5 meters away, would you think about how you take your arm back? Or would you just focus on trying to get the ball or whatever into the basket? And that is what it is. And it's the same thing in life. I think you got to keep your eye on the target and work out how best to get to that target.
And I think that's a beautiful example. And I think what's really important is that you always have the choice. You can choose to throw it in that basket. You can choose to throw it in that basket. You can choose to not throw it at all. You can just walk out of the room, or you can stand there. I mean, that you're always choosing, and that choice is really your point of power in anything that you do.
Absolutely. And you know what the default is in the golf swing? Is to think about what you're doing wrong on the backswing. It takes effort. It takes effort to focus on the target. If you just let it be, you're going to be thinking about the mistakes you're making on the backswing and where you've come from, rather than focusing on the target. So it takes effort, and it takes training, and it takes you to think differently and to shift in how you go about doing stuff. And you have to practice it. It doesn't just come naturally.
That choice to point where and notice where the barometer is pointing you is huge, because when they say that 90 to 95% of our thoughts are either negative and or repetitive, that we we want to be really focused on what it is, where is it that barometer strikes us, that's like, oh, that's it. And then it becomes a yogic practice, because when you're doing a whether it's you're doing warrior, and where you put your eyes, where you put that energy. It's like driving a car. I remember my first driving teacher saying, focus on where you're going and you will stay in the straight line. When you start micromanaging, you get all wonky. And I was 16 years old, and it was such a powerful teaching, and I still carry that with me. And thank you, Leeza. That was a beautiful way to articulate it.
So, okay, well then, Dusty, let us hear what the answer would be for you, the secret of how you shift perspective and step into willing engagement.
Gosh, there are about a dozen very powerful ways in which I shift perspective and help other people shift perspective. And I can't share in 2 minutes all 12 of those. So I'll just share a couple. Andrew Weil suggested if you're ever feeling depressed or down or feeling sorry for yourself, you're in a mood you can't get out of, take a hot pepper. Slowly eat that hot pepper, and the capsium will shift your mood. You move into a very different state of consciousness. There you go. I would also say a gentler way would be, you're really feeling down, so forth, get some really good chocolate and eat that chocolate and just taste it and feel it. It's going to shift your mood. Laughter. Laughter is the best way to shift mood. When we can laugh at ourselves. One of the emergency kits I gave my clients when I was a young therapist was these Groucho Marx glasses, which have this big nose and this mustache, these glasses. And I'd say, next time you're really feeling down, and I haven't practiced, look in the mirror, put them on, and talk to yourself. You're just no good. What's wrong with you? And when you start laughing at that voice, at that face, you're free. When we can laugh at the old tapes, the old voices in our head, we're free. It shifts perspective. And it's a way, it's inviting people to step into a larger frame of reference. I believe our minds are infinitely creative. I believe that we have tremendous capacity that many people have been hypnotized into not recognizing or seeing, that we always have choice. And when we can change our language and we can say, I choose this because this is going to take me where I want to go, we have freedom. I'll share one of my favorite poets. Poetry also helps uplift me. William Blake, short little poem. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. That's the kind of perspective where we begin to see things in a new way. We begin to think in a new way. And our unconscious mind takes what we think literally. So if we're thinking unloving, unkind thoughts about ourselves, that begins to affect our immune system. I think the most powerful way to shift, I've been saying it since we started this talks, is to go into our hearts. When I step into my heart and I get out of my ego head, my heart always knows the right path. It's like what Dave was saying. You move with the feelings, you feel it, you move into it because you're listening to this and the heart's guiding rather than the head. My time's up. 5 minutes for a response.
I was just thinking about you, James, and with what you were talking about, Dusty, and with your sister, being curious about what would happen if she started to surrounding herself with beauty and beautiful words like that William Blake poem, and moving to that place of curiosity and enchantment, that childlike wonderment, playing in the forest with the mushrooms or the whatever, the wildflowers, and that as you were speaking, Dusty, I felt transported. It becomes a place of bliss, and so if we can create more moments of that bliss, it makes it harder to stay in that place.
I'd like to share with you on that point, and I think that it's also in keeping with everything else. And as a teacher, I'm sure you can relate to this, is that you can't ever really teach anybody anything, but you can create the circumstances under which they learn, right?
Right.
And so going back to what you said, Dusty, I'm just going to try this on for a moment. If I sat here and I had made the choice that I was not going to enjoy this, and you were talking about eating a hot pepper or chocolate, for gosh sake, and I really had made the decision that I was not going to enjoy it, I wouldn't have smiled. I wouldn't have laughed. I wouldn't have had the endorphins moving within myself. And I say that provocatively because I really do believe we make those choices. And I think that if there's anything we can do, which is related to the awareness that Gary first spoke about, is just taking the moment and being very still within ourselves, sincerely asking, do I really want to feel better? Do I want to feel comfortable? Do I want to feel ease? Or do I want to continue feeling this? Because my experience is that most people don't take the time to ask themselves that. And if they did, they have some gain, without any judgment, there's some gain in maintaining the automatic of discomfort and being in a place of dis-ease. And so the fact that, I came here, I was stoked about you guys, and now Dusty's talking about peppers and chocolate, and we got all this good juice going, and, so then I'm enjoying it but I made a choice to do that on some level, both directly or indirectly.
And I would say to you, I walk into rooms with angry people all the time. I used to before COVID. I walk in where people are sitting there, nobody's going to teach me anything. I get them laughing within 15 minutes because I have this belief that deep inside people would rather feel good than feel bad. Yes. They would rather enjoy themselves than not enjoy themselves. And all I have to do is give them an excuse. So my way of working, I use a lot of humor. I really use the heart, and I'm willing to be the most naked person in the room. And if I create that vibrational energy of emotional nakedness, people step into it because people are hungry for it. Absolutely. People are starving for it in this world.
I like that.
And that's the greatest gift, isn't to do something to somebody. It's to just invite them with our love and our heart and our vibration.
With your authenticity, exactly. When you're authentic in being, when you're shining, that's the invitation. It really is.
So now this is open for anybody to ask questions or speak up, everybody who's on the Zoom call. So this is a chance to respond, to talk, to ask any questions, to offer some insights or thoughts.
And you may use the chat room also if you don't want to ask directly or you don't want to share directly, because I'll be monitoring that. I wanted to, on something you just spoke about, Gosha, and especially in this time of crises where things are really prickly and people are uncomfortable a lot of the time, is can we give ourselves permission to be joyful in the midst of that? And I actually just shared a story about when my father was passing, and his wife absolutely insisted that he go to the dining hall in the retirement community. And so we got him all dressed, put him in the wheelchair. And this was just literally a couple days before he passed. And they had these wide hallways, and he was, in heart failure at the time, and things were challenging. And so as I'm rolling him down there, he was heavy, and I was having to pull back with my weight. And I said, "Dad, you want to have some fun?" And he said, "What are you thinking?" And I said, "You trust me?" "Absolutely." I said, "Okay, hold on." So he held onto the wheelchair and I just went running with him and I jumped up on the back of the wheelchair and we went flying down. All the people on the side with their little walkers, you know, shaking their heads at us. Got to the bottom, hairpin curve, go down the other one. We got down to the, and while we're going, he's like, woohoo! We got down the dining hall and he said, that's the most fun I've had since I was flying in the cockpit. And I thought, you know, and why, and it wasn't that I ignored any of his pain and the difficulty and, you know, his leg came out of his hip socket, but it was there. It was right there. And I think that that's a permission we can give ourselves in all circumstances, but especially when things get critical. So I love that, Dusty. That's exactly, that's the end. It's the portal. It's the entryway.
Mm-hmm.
There's a trick that I like to teach my kids, and about turning the negative thoughts into positive. And instead of a pepper, I call it the mental slap, the mental buzzer. So when you have some negative thoughts, you have to create this mental buzzer. Shift. It's time to shift. And all you need are 3 positive thoughts to shift from the negative thoughts. And laughter is a great way. Go back to your vacation or whatever in your mind where and when you were at peace with yourself. Find those cues in your mind to reshift from the negative thoughts, because the negativity really gets us, and it grows on you if you let it stick on you. So the mental negative buzzer is a trick that I like to use.
Yeah.
So you're aware, and then you just shift yourself.
Larry, that's the power of self-talk. You can feel all this anxiety, all this fear. And if you say, my body's getting ready for me to give a great performance. My body's getting me ready to be able to really be fully present with all my energy, to really shine in this moment. If you change that talk, it's amazing how everything shifts and you go out there feeling excited versus anxious and fearful and pulling back, right?
Totally.
And sorry, Teresa, go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead, Lisa.
Well, I was just going to say that I always think of it as like paths through the forest, that we've been trotting those same paths that we identify as fear. It's an association. And anybody who knew me when I was younger, I grew up, my mother was severely paranoid, clinically paranoid. And fear was just the way, that's how life was. Isn't everybody afraid? I mean, I couldn't find joy in anything because I was afraid of everything. And I had a complete transformation of that. And when we got broken into, and we were living in Germany at the time, and the police came and they had to do all their tests and so forth. And it took so long, I started baking a cake because it was all into the night and they had hours there. And so they thought I was in shock and they started treating me very carefully. And I started talking to them and they said, aren't you concerned that there are people in your house? I was like, heck no. And I was amazed at the fact, I felt that liberation you were talking about, Dusty, is that there was no fear. It's like, we're all fine. Nothing severe is missing. Do you want a piece of cake? And so, and it's possible. So I guess what I'm saying is that if I could do it, anybody can. If you can, just by making that choice of retraining and retracking, and now there's this one. I am excited about getting on stage. This is going to be fun.
Yes.
That becomes your new norm.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think about it the way, you're talking about it, both of you, about that excitement and, I'm nervous, but then I'm excited. And I never thought of this before, and I'm not going to break out in song this time, but I did in my brain. And that song that we can carry with it, I'm so excited and I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control. These are all the thoughts that we have when we're anxious. But then there's that little end at the end, but I think I like it. Yeah. And so it puts this real positive twist on this sense of anxiety / excitement, which we can then rename it. We're going to make it be the game changer and be, I'm excited and I like it and I'm crazy. Yeah.
I think to add to what Dusty was saying earlier in his 2 minutes, is to, when you laugh and you have that trigger that takes you out of the moment, the negative moment, and you go to the heart, you step back and you see the big picture. And I think one of the ways to shift perspective, and it's a technique we can do all the time, especially when you're feeling fear and anxious, and here we're in this 2-month period where really, and there might be another 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, we don't know, but when you think of those few months, in the scheme of, you know, the 80, 90 years you're going to have on the planet and the things you're going to do, it just squeezes it down into not such a big thing anymore. So technique, step back every now and then, get that 10,000 foot bird's eye view of the procession of our lives in total and the things we want to do. Just takes those things that we are probably putting too much negative energy into now, and then we have the opportunity to see the whole big picture, the whole procession of life, and that you know, takes you out of the fear and out of the anxiousness and gets you to shift perspective to see, where am I going? What is the big picture? What should I spend my time on, rather than fretting and worrying?
What I love about what you're saying, Gary, is it makes me think about something, which is, I think invitation in the long run is infinitely more powerful than coercion. And that invitation could open some things up. And I think that what can we do? The question I always ask myself when I'm working with any group or any person whose arms crossed, nobody's going to change me, you're full of BS. How can I invite them? How can I authentically be there in a way that really is compellingly inviting? Mm-hmm. And I can't force them. They are a power in their own universe. All I can do is invite them. So I've really worked on my invitational strategies. And almost every time people accept the invitation, because it's a choice they get to make. It's not something they're being forced to do.
And on that point, Dusty, I'd also like to share something that's really wonderful. I used to do this when the kids were younger, and I do it now with the kids that are wearing suits in the boardroom. And that is that when people are in that place is to actually celebrate them there. Like, I totally get that you don't want to go there. I hear your frustration, your concern about the budget, and that it's going to be this way. Like, I totally get that. And when they feel that affirmation, it's like, I don't have to now fight for the fact that I'm here. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody gets it. I'm here. And I think that there's an opening there, that invitation that you're speaking about is that, okay, so now everybody knows I'm here. I don't have to fight for being here. So now what? You know, and then I can hear what you're offering to me.
Yeah, the metaphor that I use in training therapists is just that, Leeza, is that let's say someone's working with a client and the client does not wanting to change, and they get frustrated, kind of like you've been feeling with your sister Larry, James. Anyway, so I talk about how it's like when we're therapists, where it's like the client they have a horse, and a lot of times we want them to get on that horse and get galloping along and move forward. But sometimes they maybe want to be on the horse, but maybe want to go backwards or go slowly forwards, or just not go at all, or not even be on the horse. And so I talk about the task as a therapist then is not to take them from any point, to any point, but is to just be present with them, fully present, and that place of acceptance and acknowledgement, just what you're talking about, Leeza. And where they don't have to fight and they don't feel pushed or pulled, then they go, okay, so you're with me. And then they start saying, so where from here? What are we going to do from here? And it's a beautiful thing, because then the inspiration for what they really want can help guide. And the horse, if a horse doesn't want to go, a horse isn't going. And so, and if the rider doesn't want to go and is pulling the horse back, it's not going. So it's a beautiful thing. And actually we have a fifth piece. Yeah, we're going to have one more in this series, and the next one is actually, where do we go from here? I think you typed that up there for us, Leeza.
We are wrapping up our time now, so we always finish with a ritual, and I'd like to invite everybody to participate. Very briefly, what's one thing you're taking away from the conversation tonight? One thing you're taking away. And I also remind people, as Teresa was talking about, we will be meeting next Monday night at 7:00 to talk about where do we go from here. How do we redesign the future, which is going to build on the other 4 talks, which will be available online for free if people want to watch them. So just I'd start with Teresa.
Yeah, I'm in a place I often am at the end of these. I'm in a place of gratitude, and gratitude for the mastermind group, but also gratitude for our growing community, and meeting you, Gosha, and seeing you, Christine, Nedja, and I have an extra special place, this extra elevation in my heart, seeing James. I haven't seen you for years. just feeling all that love in my heart, and the gratitude for the soil that we are co-creating of that, as we all know who garden, that the soil is key. So that soil is creating the conditions, and what you're saying, Gosha, is accepting and then nourishing ourselves and those around us by creating those conditions of love and kindness and compassion and possibility thinking and laughter and joy and all that is joyous.
Thank you. Gary.
Right. I think for me, it's probably discussed more in the last session we did, but Dusty raised it again as he's written books on this, and I've read them. Go to the heart. I think I'm somebody that goes to the brain. I'm a numbers person, all that sort of thing, and we need balance in life. We need to have both, and it's no excuse just to say I'm a numbers person and therefore I can't do the rest. So go to the heart more, and Dusty keeps raising it as he has for the last 3 years, and slow learner, Dusty, but I'm getting there.
Thank you. Luke?
I was going to go with the same as Gary, but I'll move beyond the heart and also our instincts, our gut. Try to listen to them and let them lead us. And something we haven't maybe discussed much, but it has to do with what we said, is the power to let go. When you do your golf swing, Gary, you have to let go, stop thinking. When I did my first skydive, you had to let go. You had to trust. So that would be maybe something that I can take with.
Thank you.
Surrender.
Leeza?
Yeah, for me, there are two things. The first one is both the metaphysical, but also the practical aspect of the absolute transformational power of a hot pepper. I just love that. And I also think just metaphorically how one can use that. So that's really great. And the other thing that I really appreciate, and it is with gratefulness and also with awe, not the World Wide Web, but the web that we hear on this call and the ones that each one of us have out in the world. And how that, we are literally, the people on this call are spanning this globe. We have multiple continents here. And that the love and the community and the commonality that we are sharing is helping to weave that web. And I'm very grateful and in awe of that. Thank you.
Well, I have a friend who came up with a short little statement that really has been very helpful to me over the years. And he said, just remember to bob, B-O-B, breathe, open, bigger. Breathe, open up, get bigger. Just remember to bob. And I also learned 2 new ways to shift consciousness. Bake a cake and then get in a wheelchair and go down a steep hill, eat the cake as I go.
Even 2 days before you die.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But it's time for us to wrap up. We will be back next Monday at 7. If you enjoyed it, please come back. Let other people know about it. And Lisa's done all the work to produce these videos. So they are videos. There's a link where you can watch the prior ones if you wish to, if you'd like to. And it has been a joy. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
It was a lot of fun.